Death was not silence. Silence required a listener.
Lin Fan had no ears, no skin, no breath, no heartbeat. He had no meridians to circulate qi, no dantian to store power, no bones to anchor weight. The senses that had served him for 3,000 years were gone, stripped away with the body that burned beneath the heavenly slaughter formation.
Yet something remained. Not whole. Not safe. Enough. Awareness drifted in a darkness without direction. At first, there was no up or down, no near or far, no before or after. There was only pressure. It did not press against flesh. It pressed against existence itself, asking whether the fragment that called itself Lin Fan had the right to continue being distinct from the void around it. The answer came without words. Yes. The darkness tightened. Lin Fan tightened with it. If he had possessed a mouth, he might have laughed. The instinct was absurd. Even reduced to a torn remnant of consciousness, even cast beyond the reach of body and realm, the first negotiation after death was still pressure against will. How familiar. He gathered himself. There was very little to gather. His soul had shattered at the moment of death. Most fragments had been devoured by the heavenly slaughter formation or burned by his own hand to prevent capture. Some had dissolved into the red judgment blade. Some had scattered into marks placed on Ch07, and the hidden contributors. One fragment had slipped along the black chain at the final instant. That fragment was now him. Small. Damaged. Unacceptable. Lin Fan tried to extend divine sense. Nothing answered. There was no world to touch. No spiritual energy. No law of heaven and earth. No distant stars. No mountain beneath him. No enemies within reach. Divine sense, without a structure to travel through, folded back into itself like a blade cutting its own hilt. Pain should have followed. There was no body to feel pain. Instead, memory flickered. He saw Qin Mo's remaining eye, wide with terror. Suwan's bloodless face. The red sky above heavenly void peak. The black chain descending from an unseen depth. Then those images cracked and scattered. Lin Fan seized the fragments. Some slipped away. He let them go. Sentiment would waste strength. What mattered was not preserving every memory but preserving the pattern that knew how to use memory. Names could be recovered. Techniques could be rebuilt. Enemies could be identified by consequence. But if the core logic dissolved, survival became luck. Lin Fan did not trust luck. He began to sort himself. First, identity. Lin Fan. Former immortal sovereign. Betrayed by disciple Qin Mo and Tao companion Suwan. Killed by heavenly slaughter formation combined with unknown black chain. Final actions, marked contributors, marked Qin Mo, placed memory in Suwan, carved trace into black chain. Objective, survive if possible. Return if possible. Identify hidden hand. Repay all debts. The statements formed a frame. The darkness pressed against it. The frame held. Then the darkness offered erosion disguised as relief. It did not speak. It did not need to. It loosened the edges of his awareness and showed him how simple it would be to stop maintaining shape. Without body, enemies, hunger, cold, or time, there was no immediate wound to answer. If he let go, pressure would become absence. Absence would become rest. Rest would become nothing, and nothing would never be betrayed. Lin Fan rejected it. Rest was a word the defeated used to perfume surrender. The darkness changed tactics. It brought forward fragments with hooks still attached. Suwan's hand brushing a chess piece. Qin Mo kneeling after his first breakthrough, face bright with a boy's desperate pride. The first time Lin Fan stood above a conquered sect and felt the entire mountain kneel through its surviving disciples. The first time someone called him sovereign and meant it with fear rather than ceremony. Each fragment invited expansion. Each expansion would cost structure.
Lin Fan cut the hooks and stored only what could serve: Suwan's habit of hiding messages in delicate movements, Qinmo's dependence on recognition, the utility of collective fear, the danger of titles that made a man believe his own myth. The rest dissolved.
Second, hierarchy of return. If reincarnation existed here, he would refuse blind entry.
If seizure of another body became possible, he would examine compatibility before possession. If the observer intended to consume him, he would mark the process until erasure.
If no path opened, he would compress into the hardest possible remnant and wait. Waiting was not hope.
Waiting was refusal to spend the last resource without price.
He also set rules for what he would not do. He would not chase the echo of his former throne. He would not preserve pride at the expense of usable weakness. He would not trust any guide that appeared in darkness wearing a comforting face. If Suwan appeared, she would be bait. If Qinmo appeared, he would be bait. If his younger self appeared and begged to be saved, that too would be bait. The dead deserved suspicion more than the living. The living still had bodies to protect and appetites that made them predictable. The dead, or things wearing the dead, could afford patience. Patience without cost was always dangerous. He would give nothing in the dark the courtesy of being trusted. Trust belonged to men who expected the world to honor invisible contracts. Lin Fan had buried too many of them. Second, useful knowledge. Cultivation realms. Body tempering, chi gathering, foundation establishment, core formation, nascent soul, spirit severing, Tao fusion, immortal ascension, sovereign realm. The names remained. Good. Array principles. Some complete, some damaged. Heavenly slaughter formation structure, red karmic layer, grief bridge, disciple severing, remote offerings, execution blade. Black chain, outside known system, reacts to divergence and possibility, claims power rather than suppressing it. Unknown observer, non-hostile but predatory in function, interested in measurement. Techniques. Too many to preserve fully. Lin Fan cut them down. He did not need ceremonial sword forms. He did not need palace-level suppression arts requiring a sovereign body. He did not need immortal pill recipes dependent on extinct herbs unless later reconstructed. He needed foundation methods, body tempering refinements, spirit root alteration, low-realm combat, hidden inheritance locations, and the weaknesses of future enemies before they became strong. The rest could burn. Memory screamed as he discarded it. The scream belonged to no mouth. It was the resistance of a vast life being reduced to a weapon suitable for the next hand that might hold it. Lin Fan compressed the surviving knowledge. Third, emotion. This category was almost empty. Not because he had never felt. That was Suwan's preferred lie and Qinmo's convenient excuse. Lin Fan had felt fear as a child. Hunger. Admiration. Desire. Satisfaction. Irritation. A rare, mild warmth when an investment exceeded expectation. Even grief, once, perhaps, before he learned that grief without action was rot. Most of those had been burned away long before death. The remaining emotions were simple. Disgust. Curiosity. Intent to kill. He kept all three. The darkness changed. It had no movement, yet something shifted through it like a current too large to be called wind. Lin Fan's fragment was carried, or perhaps the concept of location altered around him. Without senses, he could only infer from pressure variations. There were other things in the dark. Not souls. Souls had texture. Even shattered souls left residue, desire, fear, memory, karma. These things had none of that. They were absences with edges. Vast, slow, and indifferent. Some passed far away, if distance had meaning. Others brushed near enough that Lin Fan's frame of identity trembled. One touched a discarded memory fragment drifting behind him. The fragment vanished. No devouring sensation. No flash. It simply ceased to have ever mattered. Lin Fan withdrew the rest closer. Interesting. This was not the underworld described by scriptures. Not reincarnation rivers, not judgment halls, not ghost domains where cultivators bargained with death officials.
Those places existed in some form. Lin Fan had broken into 2 of them during his life and stolen things from both. They were crude compared to this. This darkness felt outside the circulation of worlds. The black chain had not killed him. It had pulled one fragment beyond the ordinary end. Why? He tested the boundary with thought fragments too small to matter. First, he released the memory of a nameless guard's face. It drifted outward and faded in 3 pulses.
No reaction.
Next, a broken piece of sword intent from a technique he no longer needed.
It lasted longer.
The darkness thinned around it, then something without outline passed through and the fragment ceased. Finally, he released a false intent, a constructed desire to return to Ch07 and forgive. The darkness stirred more sharply. The observer's trace, faint and distant, quivered beyond perception. Lin Fan withdrew the false intent before it could be taken. So the dark distinguished wait. Memory, technique, desire. Desire drew more attention. Useful. He sealed his true desires deeper and let only one remain visible on the surface. Revenge. Simple desires made good bait. Observation alone did not require preservation. If the hidden existence wanted to study his death, it could have watched the formation consume him. If it wanted his power, the chain could have claimed more before his soul shattered. If it wanted punishment, it had poor taste. Pain without audience or memory was meaningless. Therefore, purpose remained incomplete. Lin Fan searched for the mark he had carved into the chain. At first, he found nothing. The darkness had no surface, no direction, no object that could be called a chain. The connection that pierced him before death was gone or transformed. He had only the memory of having marked it. Memory could be enough. He rebuilt the final instant. Red blade. Soul collapse. Black chain tightening. Unknown attention pausing. Violet mark carved with last consciousness. Fragments slipping through. Death. Again. Red blade. Soul collapse. Black chain tightening. Unknown attention pausing. Violet mark carved. Fragments slipping. Again. On the 9th reconstruction, something answered. A line appeared in the darkness. It was thinner than hair, darker than what surrounded it, visible only because Lin Fans will recognize the wound he had made. The violet mark was not light now. It was a difference. A refusal inside the black. Lin Fan moved toward it. Movement was impossible. He moved anyway. The pressure increased immediately. The darkness did not like direction. Direction implied intent. Intent implied separation. Separation implied a self that could resist being dissolved into the surrounding void. Lin Fan sharpened his frame. Lin Fan. Former immortal sovereign. Betrayed. Killed. Unfinished. The line grew clearer. As he approached, fragments of memory tried to peel away from him. A sword technique vanished. A pill formula dimmed. The face of an enemy he had killed during his 2nd century blurred beyond recovery. Lin Fan let them go. The line mattered more. Something vast passed behind him. The pressure of its passage nearly flattened his identity. For one moment, he was not Lin Fan. He was only a point of awareness in dark. Then disgust returned. He used it as an anchor. Lin Fan. The name reformed. He reached the line. Touch, without a hand, was comprehension. The mark he had carved into the black chain had not remained on a chain. It had become an opening. A slit in whatever boundary separated the death of a world from the place beyond it. Through that slit came a faint pull, not toward life, not toward death, but toward attention. The observer was still connected. Lin Fan pushed into the slit. The darkness resisted. He compressed himself further. More memory burned. He sacrificed the layout of 7 minor immortal tombs.
The complete version of a thunder movement art. The taste of a wine Ch07 once favored. The name of a servant who had saved Chen from fever in his youth. 300 small victories. 400 insults. 1,000 faces that had never mattered enough. The slit widened. Cold light appeared beyond it. Lin Fan stopped. Light in this place was not comfort. Light meant definition. Definition meant something had chosen how it wished to be perceived. He examined it from the threshold. The light had no color. It did not illuminate the darkness, it simply existed as a boundary the dark could not cross. Within it were shapes that rearranged whenever he tried to understand them. Pillars became eyes. Eyes became rings. Rings became lines of script written in no language. The script became a still surface like water without reflection. At the center of that impossible geometry stood nothing. The nothing looked back. Lin Fan held his identity steady. The pressure disappeared. After so much resistance, the absence of pressure was almost more dangerous. It created a false sense of space. Lin Fan did not expand into it. He remained compressed, small and sharp. The cold light deepened. Something like a voice entered his awareness. It did not use sound. Sound required air. It did not use language. Language required shared limitation. It placed meaning directly against the frame of his identity and waited to see whether he would break. Dead thing, the meaning said. Lin Fan answered with meaning of his own. Not finished. The light stilled. For the first time since death, the darkness around him seemed to draw back. The observer focused. Lin Fan felt the full weight of that focus and understood, with absolute clarity, that the existence before him was beyond the world that had produced the sovereign realm. Not stronger in the simple way one cultivator was stronger than another. Strength still belonged to scale. This thing stood outside the measuring rod. That realization did not create worship. Worship was surrender decorated with incense. Lin Fan had seen mortals worship cultivators, cultivators worship immortals, immortals worship laws they did not understand, and all of them eventually bleed when the proper edge found them. If this existence stood outside the measuring rod, then the first task was not to kneel before it. The first task was to learn what it used instead of measurement. It had helped kill him, or allowed others to use its trace. It had also preserved him. Both facts mattered. The cold light formed a narrow path. Lin Fan did not mistake invitation for safety. He entered because remaining outside offered no advantage. As he crossed the boundary, the last echoes of heavenly void peak vanished. Red formation light, Chen-Mo's scream, Ch07's tears, the collapse of his mountain, all faded behind him like sparks swallowed by deep water. Only the mark remained. Only the observer remained. And Lin Fan, reduced to a blade's edge of will, carried himself into the colorless light. The impossible geometry closed around him. Then the existence beyond the world spoke again.